Mabrika, mabrika, mabrika. Peace to everyone. Yes. What a beautiful day. The sun is out. Beautiful. I love the greenery, which I can show it to you guys. I got to do some podcasts out. I should have done this particular one out in the field. But I decided, I have to think about it next time. Maybe when we do another meditation, do it out in the field, you know. But anyway, I hope you enjoy that meditation that I did. It's on my Facebook page. I wasn't able to put it on the YouTube, but this is also going to go on my Facebook. But check it out. Pretty soon I'll be doing this, the broadcasting simultaneously. Okay, I could do that now. I'll get it hooked up by tonight. Okay, so I wanted to start a series of podcasts that's gonna deal with it's gonna deal with the energy centers, which the Hindus call chakras. Um, the Kemetic say Arushat. I don't know. I'm not too familiar with what Native American calls it. However, for sake of this conversation, we'll just refer to chakras. Um, no, better yet, let's refer to it as energy center because it's energy. Uh, First, let's define what is energy. When you look at the dictionary, energy is to be active. You say that person is energetic, that means that person is very active. That person has no energy, that means that person is not active, you know? So energy is active. So these energy centers are active centers. And those are just the centers, but they also go out in the sphere and they impact your aura. Your etheric body has its points, but then it goes out, just like we have, um, you know, certain organs and vibrates, the pulsation is out throughout the body. This one goes throughout the etheric body, your aura. So let's say your root chakra will go around like this. The sacral will be around like that, and on and on and on and on. So it's spherical. At the same time, it's moving about. That's when they talk about when you hit that point in your spherical. If you hit that point, that you're able to activate these, what they call the makarba, these centers open up and you vibrating. Yeah, they said you become a ball of light and you go, whoo, be out of here. Okay, I haven't seen anybody personally do that, but I experienced things like that as I astral project. You see, I've astral project and felt the light hit me here, and next thing you know, I was in another world. You know what I'm saying? Another thing I wanted to say that we did the natural meditation just to get familiarized with these centers. But I want to say also that there are also other techniques and skills that are used in these ancient cultures and these indigenous cultures. And a lot of times they can use chemical plants that allow you to open up these centers. But that takes a shaman or takes a person, a spiritual person, very well learned, and who's able to prepare you. A lot of times, what they'll do is to prepare you, they'll tell you about your diet. You spend time with them eating what they eat and certain diets, leaving certain meats out, creating that favorable environment within your body so that when you do intake, like ayahuasca told, or the DMT, when you do take these chemical plants, open you up, you don't get a bad trip because everything internal will be externalized and it will show up in your pineal gland that will be viewing this world, you know, this dream state world that you find yourself in. So there has to be, it takes skills, it takes discipline, very much discipline. That's what you get the word disciple from. It takes discipline. And so a lot of the ancients, and there's accounts, like the Midians, like when Moses met, his father-in-law was a Median priest. And if you look at the Median culture, they had a sacred order within that culture, which came out of the order of Melchizedek. They had that order, and they practiced using certain plants, what I'm saying, as to give that rise level of consciousness, super consciousness, and those are just skills. So I just wanted to mention that there are other ways to, they use chemicals, plants that help you activate the center. And then with the mudra, with the mantras and the mudra are hand signals, on positions of the hand, right? Positions of the hand, mudras, and mantras, like Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. They got different mantras, that's a Buddhist mantra, by the way. I like the Om mantra, and I'm going to demonstrate something for you too about the Om. It has to be done the right way. The Tibetans, they do the tritone. They recorded them, I think in the 40s or something like that. They recorded the Tibetan monks doing this mantra, and they found that there was a tritone in there. And I will demonstrate a little bit of what that means. I'm a musician, so I study very heavily into that. I haven't done it in a while, but I think I still got it. We went. Let me just very briefly state the different Arusha, or the energy centers. Now, I tell you, I deal with 9. Whereas Hindus and certain Eastern philosophy, they deal with 7, because the 7 ether, there's 7, that's their number of the highest for them, For the Tahites and for other indigenous cultures, 9 is the highest number, is the highest attainable number, because after 9 comes 10, which starts the cycle all over again. So I deal with 9 Arushas. The first one is the earth energy, and that's the grounding and the anchoring. That aligns you with earth energy. Now remember, earth don't mean the whole earth. It means your territory, where you at the present moment, becomes your Iret. In Hebrew they say Iret or Urda, right? Earth from Ia, Iret. That deals with territory, grounding and anchoring to your territory around you. Okay, that's that first energy point. That affects you. Okay, it's that your territory, your immediate surrounding, your territory. Then you have, when you get closer, you have what they call the root chakra. Now, the root chakra is at the base of the spine. That one also grounded and supported, okay? And that one is supported by food, shelter, and finance, money, okay? Currency and money. That's the energy that deals with food, shelter, and money. And when you go up, you got the sacral energy. That's the lower abdomen. And that one is the sense, that's where you get your sense of abundance and well-being, creativity, pleasure, and sexuality. Okay, and that's a transmutation energy. Okay, the first one, the earth one, is the genesis. That's the territory. That's the genesis. That one deals a lot with ancestral patterns and genetic blueprint, because everything starts with your DNA. Okay, and then right from your DNA, then you got your root, which is basically your spine. That one deals with your food, shelter. You wanting to survive. That's a survival mode right there. Your food, shelter, and money. The sacral one is your pleasure and sexuality, okay, energy. And that's your sacral one. That's the lower abdomen. And that's where creativity comes from, pleasure and stuff like that. Then you got the solar plexus, which is above your belly button, just below the sternum. And that's where you get your willpower, control, ideas, conviction of self. And that's a purification. Okay, that's a purification takes place right there in the solar plexus. You have then you got your heart chakra, or what to say, the heart energy, and that one is the mid level, and just above the heart. That's where you feel love, compassion, experience joy, and you find your inner peace. You know, and that energy is abundance. So you find abundance at your throat. Next one is self-expression related to feelings and truth. That one deals with resonance. Okay, that's your throat energy. That's the one that gives your voice the energy to speak your truth. Okay, then you have the third eye energy. That's right on the forehead between the eyebrow. That one affects your inclinations, your wisdom, your intuition, okay, which is in contact with your soul, your gut feeling, and then you're going to register here at the pineal gland, your ability to think logically and make sound decisions. So that's that pine cone gland, okay, that's in your brain, in the middle of your brain. Then on top of that, right floating above is what they call the 1,000 petals above. That one is right on your forehead between the that one is located in the highest point of your head, right? That's how you see that little soft spot when the child was born, or everybody has a little spot like that. That's that right there. It's that energy that floats, hovers over that part of your head, and that one it allowed us to connect to our spiritual nature, what it called it allows us to connect with our character and personality, the nature of our character and our personality. That's how you connect with that, and your higher energy feeling. So, and that's where you get ascension, and the feelings about your inner and outer beauty and bliss is in that particular energy. Then on top of that one, right, when you look up into the multiverse, you got the star energy. Okay, the star is the sun is a star. Okay, that's that sun energy. That's the highest. That one is a healing karma. It heals your wounds, your karma wounds, understanding personal archetypes and symbols, remembering your connection to the source, which is in Kemetic signs would be Nut. The source is Nu or Nut, where remember when we spoke about the 3 different abodes, and we said that you got the Elohims, right? And then you got, which stem from the Anunnaki. So the Allahumma and the Elohim stem from the Anunnaki in that particular culture and language. And then you had the Ilah, right? Anu, and you had the Allah, and then the source of that was El for Ilah, An for Anu and Anunnaki, and then you had Al for Allah and Allahumma. Well, in the Kemetic signs, you got Nuturu, and then you have Nutur. Nutur is plural. Nuturu, the U will be plural. Then you got the Nutur, and then you got Nut. It's source, okay? And that's that breakdown. Okay, so you look at different cultures, you'll find similar diagrams, similar blueprint of this. So that's just quickly mentioning the 9 energy centers. Okay, and each one of those energy center has also frequencies, You know, I got it here, the frequency. They all have colors. From the one, the earth is black, the star all the way is white. Okay. But then we can always discuss that also. You know what I'm saying? And then you got Roy G. Biv. I always remember Roy G. Biv. You know, red, orange, and yellow going up from the root. The root energy will be red, sacral, orange, solar plex is yellow, and then the heart is green, the throat is blue, the pineal gland is indigo, and then you got the crown, which is violet, and then you got the energy of all those energy combined will give you the energy of light. Okay, what they call white light. Okay, and that's just that. So wanted to talk about the flood because we're going to segue into the first of those energy center being the earth. Okay, so remember earth is when you say earth, you're dealing with territory, ground, foundation, territory. Okay, doesn't mean the whole earth as a globe, just means the territory where you're at. That's your world. Okay, and so remember what I said about the biblical narrative about before the flood, there was a super advanced scientific civilization. And this you find throughout all of the tablets, papyrus, you know, tablets even in the Mayan tablets, Mayan papyrus, the Toronto records. You find it in the Nordic. Well, we're going to go into the Nordic also. The 6 kings, what they call the Vikings, the 6 kings. So this super advanced scientific civilization. And if you look at, you know, oceanography and archaeology and stuff, they notice that, and they study oceanography, studied the plate tectonic and how they ascertained that it shifted. Okay, and it makes a lot of sense because when you look at, you know, the continent, what is known as Africa today, it fits in a puzzle with South America in the bottom and North America, but you see a little bland spot. That's what they say was the so-called city of Atlantis, which was out of the word Utlat. But we all know that it had different other names in the indigenous tablets. You know, and the emerald tablets call it by another name because the Thoth, who was the Atlantean or Tahuti in ancient Kemet, they say that he came from that part of the world, which was the Utla, the other side, okay, where the two land mass of North America and South America was once together in place. There was no Atlantic Ocean, right? So this, when you look at the ley lines and you look at a lot of these pyramids throughout the world, right? Throughout each of these different continents, you see that if you put all these continents together, these grids were more condensed. Okay, you look at the pyramids in Giza, they mimic the pyramids of Peru or Mexico, Peru. They mimic. You got the 3 pyramids that align through the Orion belt. So also the pyramids of Giza. So this was a system combined. So remember when the plate tectonic shift and moved, it was like a harpsichord, right? It was combined and it spread out for the ley lines spread out, but they're still there. They're still there to this day. I mean, you got like I said, geographers, people that study the energy grids of the earth. They study these energy spots, you know, and they register this with their instrumentation, and they register these energies that are there. They got a very strong energy and ley line off of the coast of Florida. Not off the coast, but actually hitting the point in Florida because it links up with the Bermuda Triangle, and that links up with all, so you have a system of ley lines, throughout the globe. But at one time, this mass was condensed together before the plate tectonic shift, right? So during that time that they built all these obelisks out of granite, and they made study that this granite had a sort of like a resonance. They hit it with something and it resonated. And they looked at the pyramids, they look at certain sites and they saw it was on the grid, and energy was being exchanged between each one of them. It was like an energy grid that these ancient scientific civilization had knowledge. It used to power their cities. So you see evidence of very, very advanced scientific artifacts. Wheels, certain wheels cut out with lasers. You see these granite, big slab of granite stones being cut like it was cut with laser, because they had the knowledge of the sun energy, which is nuclear, and they were able to harness that. That's where you see in the drawings, the walls of Kemet, Akhenaten had the ability. You see him holding up these two bows, and you see the sun, and you see the sun with hands. You see the sun with the Ankh, and you see him holding these two, what appear to be bows or light bulbs. You see that he was able to harness this energy. And when you look at the story, when you go back into the tablets and you look at the story very well, and you go into what is that story in ancient Kemet? Is the pull it up. It is the Book of the Heavenly Cow. The Book of the Heavenly Cow was an Egyptian text dealing with the rebellion of humanity against the sun god Ra. Okay, so remember how I said how they took things and they plural and they singularized it. Same thing with the sun god Ra. This was the ability of a master scientific advanced beings that had the capability of harnessing the sun energy. And so they also, because they harnessed it, they had were very advanced scientifically. So they had genetic cloning, they had epigenetics, and they were invested in these higher science. Now, this is the thing, is that remember in the story, you have these sons. So these were your Anunnaki, Elohim, the Tirus. They went by different, depending on the culture you were and the territory you were. This is what you saw. This is what you call them. This advanced civilization, right? And they spread throughout all these continents, and they were one. They were spread throughout. The center, one of the centers was at Giza. One of the centers were in Mesopotamia by Iraq. They had the ziggurats there, and one of the centers were in Peru. So they had different centers, and then you had what they call Utla, what they call Atlantis, okay, where the Bermuda Triangle, which is triangle, is a pyramid. Is a pyramid still intact with its cap, and it's letting out that electromagnetic forces. That's the reason why boats and aircraft get caught up in this magnetism, this magnetic force. They get caught up in that. I mean, just look this up. You know what I'm saying? It's a simple research. So, so you had an advanced scientific community, civilization that were able to harness the power of the sun. And they found nuclear powers plant, ancient nuclear power plants in certain continents, and they found cities around these pyramids and stuff like that, and around the centers, it was the energy source was being harnessed for one another, and it came from the sun. Well, excuse me. Oh boy, I'm detoxing, so a lot of stuff comes up. So the remember in the biblical narrative, you hear about the sons of the Elohims. They were out there taking young girls for their own pleasure, taking them from the daughters of men. Okay, that's what it translates into. You got to read it in the Hebrew concordance, and you got to see these words, what they mean, and then you put two and two together. You say, wait a minute, they were seizing, they were just taking young girls, maidens, from the daughters, from men, from from tribes. They were taken because they were sons of the Elohim. They figured they had the power, they had the right, the magistrate, just like in today's day and time with this whole Jeffrey Epstein thing. You know what I'm saying? A lot of these hierarchy feel that they got the right. They come by with a motor car, you don't see them, they got tinted windows, they come by and they feel like they can prey on humanity, and they get away with it, or they're gonna try to get away with it. Now there's a pushback. Same thing in ancient time. There was a big pushback, and with this pushback and these warriors and this uprising, which it speaks about in the book of the Heavenly Cow, was an uprising, okay, against this civilization, this uprising. They were afraid also that they saw these advanced, the scientific um, occurrence of them cutting the stones with this laser. We were like, remember I tell you we were young. You take the focus, the what they call like a microscope, the focus thing, and you put in the sunlight, and you burn through paper. This was the idea concept of the laser. They knew about the laser, certain quartz, certain stones that were able to split light and use light as a energy, a condensed stream of energy that can cut through stones. Laser technology. They're finding it's something ancient. It's nothing that has been discovered. Well, discover I mean to this something that's already been covered. So rediscovered it, but it's an ancient practice where they were harnessing the power of the sun to create laser. And so a lot of people, because of these sons of the Elohims, of their sons and grandsons, taking advantage of the people because they're appearing like they're more superior. Okay, the people felt or feared the technology that these Elohims or these Kachinas Elohims, or more or less even the Orichas, these names and this culture of the hierarchy, of actual gods and goddesses. They appear, and they appear themselves to be gods and goddesses over the rest of the population because they had the knowledge, the scientific knowledge. And so there was a pushback, and what happened was this massive rebellion, right? What they did is they caused a nuclear holocaust. When they did that, they caused certain part of the continent to crack. Water, tsunamis came in. That's where you get the idea of the flood. When you look at the book of Atrahasis, we talk about Atrahasis, the story of Noah. It's a story of Hatrasis, the story of Zujuda, Aneshaphin. You see, even the book of the Heavenly Cow, you see a similar occurrence. Because remember what we say about the biblical narrative is that, like the Godfather, is that they took certain events from certain actual accounts, right? And they made one account. They created a new character, Vito Corleone, from Angelo Bruno, Giancana, Carlo Gambino, Vito Genovese, all these big bosses. their characters and their personality, and they used to create one personality, one character by the name of Vito Corleone. And then the certain things, certain like the trial that happened with the mafia with Valachi, and the trial when they brought in Vito Genovese to these trials. So they look at Michael Corleone going into trial. They took these stories of different characters and condensed it into one story, one character, one plot, one script. Same thing what they did with the biblical narrative. So Noah is a story of many different characters that spoke about a big flood, a big an occurrence that happened, okay, that separated the landmass more. Water started to seep in. Certain like the certain rivers started to grow. You had the Red Sea, certain seas, certain, you know what I'm saying? And this area, the Sahara Desert became, it used to be flourishing in vegetation and plant life, but it became a desert, you know what I'm saying, all the way to Saudi Arabia, a desert, you know what I'm saying? But all of that used to be because they found, that's where you get oil from. When you dig deep into the desert and you find oil, is because life, that's the blood of certain life that lived on this planet, or certain vegetation, became the blood, became black oil. You know, this is all, archaeology, anthropology. This is all the sciences that you can just go and view it and put the pieces together. Because remember what we said is that truth is when all the pieces of the puzzle fit together. Then you arrive at the truth. All right. Falsehood is the opposite. When the pieces doesn't match up, that's when you get falsehood. Okay. So you see these pieces to arrive at the truth. You have to put all these pieces together. Okay. And that gives us the bigger backstory, the bigger picture that there was an occurrence that did happen, a global occurrence. There was a advanced civilization. You can see that there was an advanced scientific civilization that existed. And then that you read it in the stories that because of the pushback, and that created this nuclear holocaust. And therefore you get your deserts, and you get, what I'm saying? The destruction. Okay. So the story of Noah goes back then. Now let's look at the flood. When you look at the story of how Noah, or let's say in the story of the Epic of Gilgamesh, or the Illumination, I think it is, one of those, talks about Anatfushni, if I'm pronouncing it right, was, so he overheard that he knew of this destruction happening. In other words, it's the scientific community, the advanced scientific community was about to pull the switch. Let's just end this all. But this is the thing. They had an escape plan. And those tribes that were in their favor was told about the escape plan. That's what it talks about. Noah was in the favor of the Elohim. So they told him about it, of this plan that was coming down. Okay, this destruction plan, or this nuclear holocaust that was inevitable. It was bound to happen. So they told him to create a craft. But that was one section. When you look at the stories of the other indigenous population, you get to see that if you deal with the Mayans, and you deal with the Cachinas and the Native Americans, you deal with that side, and the destruction of Atlantis, the submerging of it, and the waters coming in, that destruction. Excuse me one second. Damn, I hate that. But anyway, these scientific scientists or community civilization, they were so advanced that they had gliders. They had um, vehicles that were able, as aerial vehicles that were able to glide and to break the bounds of gravity. You know, ships, right? The Cachinas tells the story that when they left the area of what's known Utla, Atlantis, that bland area, when they left, they said they were guided by the ancestors of these ships, guided them. That's the reason why when you go into Peru and you go into certain areas, you from up high, you see images of animal images. You see the bird image here, you see the snake. Those were signs and to let the people know go to that direction. Those were schools because the scientific community also had schools, what they call like universities, that people study under. It was a civilization. Every advanced civilization has a university, a place, a temple where people study. So they told when before this event happened, just like what happened to Alexandria, the burning of that library in Alexandria, a lot of the students, of the scribes, took information with them, tablets, artifacts, scrolls, took it to preserve it and ran their way, guided by these masters on the ship or gliders, guided them into certain areas. So they took a lot of the scrolls and a lot of the teachings with them. That's where we get the whole Yoruba, Orichas. When you look at the Orichas, you look at these characters and personalities, were characters and personalities, beings that were of the scientific community. These were scribes that took the information, the idea of iron smelting. You know, it was an advanced civilization that had iron smelting and quartz and irrigation, advanced irrigation. A lot of these studies, scrolls, and spiritual accounts or spiritual, what they call spiritual teachings, spread out. These scribes spread out with this information because they were told to go out, spread out. With destruction is coming, like in Alexandria, they took these scrolls and spread out. Now they say Vatican City in the library there has most of those scrolls that they took out of Alexandria when they burned Alexandria in Egypt. Because the scribes, before this destruction happened to take these scrolls, artifacts, and went their way. And when they went their way, they settled in certain community with people, tribes, and taught these tribes about what happened or the knowledge that they had. So they had bits and pieces. I said you have bits and pieces. If you even go into the continent of Africa today, they got tribes real deep in the jungles of the Congo or real deep into South Africa that tells the story of these gliders, these people that came up from ships, bringing knowledge to them, like the Dogon tribes, and tribes in I forgot the name of these tribes, but they got some. The Bushmen were different because the Bushmen saw it and they knew those are the gods. And to this day and time, there was a nice documentary about a kid that get lost, a bushman, a little small child gets lost, and the way they used to talk about when they used to see the airplanes and stuff. Those are the gods. They already knew the account of these gods. You know what I'm saying? So this is, and even if you go into Europe and the Nordic, With the Vikings, they tell stories of crafts coming and actually pointing out where to go for them. Remember this catastrophic event that happened in this continent and shifted the continent, the plate tectonic. It was a huge, it was a huge civilization. Like today in time, the European civilization spread its hands throughout many different continents. That's how it was with the civilization. Okay, but they were very advanced scientific civilization. A lot of that technology did go over, into the Babylonians, into the Greek, into the that's you get the story of Zeus, and into the Roman. You know what I'm saying? Had certain technology that weren't people did not know about. Only the hierarchy were able to, were able to participate or to know about it. You know what I'm saying? But I think through the Roman Empire, they weren't allowed. Not too many of them were allowed to, you know, invest themselves into the scientific technology. You know what I'm saying? It was lost, you know, until the European Empire came in. And then as you started to see with the Germans, Germans were very invested. Hitler spent his time going around the different continent and spent his time, especially in areas where he wanted to extract these old scrolls and manuscripts because they were looking for more technology. You know, um, that's where you get the story of Raiders of the Lost Ark. You know what I'm saying? You know, they were raiders of the Lost Ark was actually these Germans, Nazis, where you get the word NASA. And this is the scientific community today consists of NASA. You know, so not to get away so much deep into that one, but so that's where you get all these stories of the Kachinas, stories of the Oruchas, and the Dargans. I forgot what they call them, and you get all these stories of this event. This catastrophic event happened, and everybody going their way. You know, through these gliders, these vehicles that flew. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of times when they were able to the propulsion of that vehicle, it made streams and it looks like it was a snake in the sky. So a lot of them had that, interpretation of it. You know what I'm saying? And that's art when it comes into art, ancient art, the interpretation of that. So that comes into play. You know what I'm saying? Um, so to recap, so this to segue into the ancestral patterns, this is stories of ancient ancestors. And that's why you get in the Yoruba, in what they call Santeria, Lukumi, in Yoruba, Ifa, or that system, you get stories of the Ruchas and you get that ancestral, what they call ancestral reverence. You know, so they're saying like this guy like this type of food. He likes this type of plant. He was about iron. You know, he was the iron, the man of iron, or let's say Oya, or was it Oya or Chung? Ogun was the iron, or Chung I think was the honey. So they put a bowl of honey, and that's what calmed Ogun down. You know what I'm saying? She seduced him because that was his wife was Oya. You know what I'm saying? And that's the goddess of what they call death, I guess. So all these characters and personalities came from these scribes because of the scientific civilization. And this is what was spread out. Because you see those same scenarios and character personality come up into ancient Kemet with Isis, Netheth, and Hathor, and all these the same. You can actually There's a book, I forgot the brother's name, but I think the Asset Society, they have a book that kind of like give you the rundown of that. You know, that Amun was Chango, and they gave you the rundown of that because they kind of like connected their personality and the characters. You know what I'm saying? So they went into different cultures and they happened to put that together. You know what I'm saying? So ancestral reverence, it's used in a lot of cultures. You know what I'm saying? Not too much. Even the European, don't get it twisted. The European have this ancestral worship because they do have their statues. You know what I'm saying? And at certain times they have their little holidays and statues, and they have reverence for that particular ancestors. That's the problem they're having now is that there's a pushback right now with that because those ancestors, you have another group saying, oh, they were racist and this and that, and we should have reverence. But that's their culture. Let them have reverence for their own culture. That's on them. You know what I'm saying? Um, when it comes to ancestral reverence, you got to break it down. You got ancient ancestors, which deals with tribal rights and tribal passage, rites of passage, right? But that's very far, far distant. Okay. Now, a lot of it runs by oral folklore traditions. But I'm one that we got to be very careful with that because remember the test what they did when you was a child and they line your kids up and they said one thing to one kid. By the time it got to the other kid, it was a change story or change phrase or something like that. So we got to be very, very cautious with that folklore like that. You know what I'm saying? But one thing about the Yoruba is that they have songs, a certain rhythmic pattern that tells that story more authentically. You know what I'm saying? So you really got to pay attention to that. You know, because folklore can also be could be protected through songs and rites, but you have to have the training of the person has to be well trained in that language and well trained in those folklore as to keep the exact pronunciation. Because if you know anything about a lot of indigenous translation languages, a lot of phrases may sound similar to other phrases, may mean a totally different thing. It also happens in English too. You know what I'm saying? When you have some synonyms, that are used, homonym and synonyms that are used, and you're thinking it means this, but it can mean that. You know what I'm saying? It depends on how you articulate. Like for instance, the A. You got A like in at, right? Wait a minute. I'm trying to say in English, what's the word? After uh. Well, mm, I can't remember the words of how to break down in English. The different type of A's. You got what they call a glottal R sound, R, like in apple, not apple, but apple, right? And then you got ah, like at, ah, ah, ah. In Semitic language, you have that. You know what I'm saying? Diphthongs is two of those sounds together when you go ah or ah, ah. You see, Chinese use a lot of diphthong. And depending on how you linguistically how they use those diphthong will determine the phase what they're trying to say. So that you can say something wrong by not using the proper diphthongs or the proper articulation. You know, that's linguistics. It's nice to study linguistics. I used to love my linguistics classes that I took in college. I was very interested, and that's the reason why I signed up for it. But you know, so what I was speaking about is so certain songs and certain folklore has to be properly preserved and trained, by the right priest or the right scribe. You know what I'm saying? And the pronunciation, they could say something wrong or at the wrong time. Because I seen it happen a lot when I played in Bembe. I seen it happen a lot where the person, the orator, the one singing, well, a lot of time would be corrected by another person saying, "No, not there. You don't say it like that. Not there. You say it like this." And I saw that happen a lot. You know what I'm saying? So it's a science. It's a precise thing. So we have to be very careful with that. So when it comes to ancestral reverence, those patterns, there's some ancestral patterns that are out there, and that we're just going, well, why? Um, Folklore, right? Now and the part I not that I disagree, but it doesn't resonate too much with me is that some ancestors that says need you to put a plate of food for have reverence for them. They're asking for a plate of food, but I'm like, your ancestors is the energy, right? The energy, say energy of your ancestors. They don't have mouth. They can't see the way we see. They don't have mouth to feed themselves the way we feed ourselves. So why are you putting a plate of food there that's going to go bad? A lot of times they say, well, because the parasites and this and that. Well, you're creating bacterial germs around. So that's my view. You know what I'm saying? Everybody want to do their thing, but that's my view. Now, I do ancestral reverence like this. And it's interesting that my mom was brought this up. So you will have your ancestral shrine and you have a picture of your immediate ancestors that passed, like your grandfather, if he's not living any longer, or your great grandma, you still remember her, right? So you set up the shrine. If they like a particular plant, it's okay to put it there because that's the particular plant that they like. And when you view it, it your ancestors also live in you. They don't live outside of you. They're in you. You're part of that. So you're liking these plants because your great grandma liked it. Which bring me up to this. I told my mom, "Oh, mom, I make tamarindo. What I do is I'll sit by a window. I have my two bowls, right, and my garbage bag, and I take the tamarindo and I'll crack the shell, take out the meat inside, strip it, take out the seeds, put the seeds in one bowl, and put the meat in another bowl, right, of the tamarindo. It's like a natural candy. It's very nice and kind of sour, but it's kind of very nice and not that sour. And I do that, and then I put the shell in the garbage bag. And she says, "You know something? Your great grandma used to do the same thing. She used to sit by the window. She'd have a bag of garbage there. She'd have a bowl there, and she would do the same thing." I said, "Ma, I enjoy doing that. That's like therapy for me. I sit down and I would make my tamarindo fresh." She said, "Man, so on my shrine, I would take the seeds of the tamarindo, put it in a bowl, and put it by her picture. I would get a picture or an artifact that remind me of her, a statue or a picture, put it there, and put tamarindo seeds because that resonates. See, that's when you have knowledge of that and saying, man, I'm doing things. For instance, like my grandfather, he was very biblical orientated. He was a reverend, Pentecostal reverend. He was very much into the biblical narrative, but he also read other books. He was into writing other book. He made speeches in graduation for schools. Very intelligent man. People loved. They were like when he walked around town. People were like, that's an intelligent man because he had ways. The thing is, the religious narrative used to come into play. You know what I'm saying? But he had his, and I'm the same way. So if I put a picture of my grandfather up on a shrine, right, my reverence for him, I will put the Bible next to his picture. You know what I'm saying? Because I know that the man was invested in that. This is what I have a connection with him because of that. So that's why I have a biblical narrative. And some of my family members who are older and who even has the name of my grandfather, this is how we resonate. You know what I'm saying? Big ups to my cousin Danny, who gave me a Bible right here. So this Bible, I'll put it on my grandfather around his picture because this is what resonates with me. This is part of who I am. And I'm remembering it, reverencing that I got my great grandma, Encarnacion, Mama. I got her picture, and I got my tamarindo seeds. And I like cooking. I remember her cooking natural meals. So when I cook, if I know that she likes a particular type of food, I'm not gonna put it on the altar. I'm gonna eat it because it's gonna resonate me, and it's gonna activate that particular genetics, that personality that's in me of her. When I feel I have a need to eat a certain type of food, is because that character and personality that comes from her is resonating in my body. You know what I'm saying? So you have to sometimes also be careful because if your immediate ancestors have bad habits, that can also resonate within you and create unfortunate or bad resonance. So you have to also be very aware of that. So that's for me is ancestral reverence. That is all about grounding yourself with your ancestors pattern, right? And that earth energy. That's earth energy because this is flesh from flesh from flesh. DNA, DNA genetics, the extremities is the flesh and the bones. I'm the flesh and the bones of my ancestors because it's aligned. The mitochondrial DNA, especially through the woman. Okay. And I got to find out more about my father's genetic, ancestral pattern so that I can, in my shrine, I have that which is resonate to me. Now, this is an ancient custom. This is an ancient indigenous custom. And that's what I'm saying. Okay. In certain societies, they replace that with what? With other reverence. So now you got people that are not into this ancestral reverence, but what they do is they replaced it with, for instance, the story of Jesus Christ and his genetics, ancestral makeup. Because when you look at, I think in Matthew or one of those books, it gives you a rundown all the way down to Joseph. It gives you a rundown of his genetics. And they even do that in Genesis with Moses. They do it with Adam, with Noah. You know what I'm saying? This is ancestral reverences, a pattern. So when you replace that with your actual one, you know what I'm saying? You're now living outside of who you are and your culture, which is your earth chakra. Hold on one second. So, so you know, that's the difference of a sense. And so ancestral patterns, ancestral reverence, that plays into the earth energy. It's something that we have to be aware of. Okay. Another thing is genetics, what they call genetic blueprint. Okay. That's why I advise people to get their DNA testing, to find out the genetics, because that's very important. I want to read something here because I've been getting a lot into the Taino genetics because from being from the island of Borinquen and knowing the history of that, what makes us up, and I want to be sure. And I'm sure because I know my great grandma and I know them and I can see where they're from. Born my great grandma, my mom was born in Maunabo. My grandfather born in Arroyo, no, Maunabo also. It was my grandmother was born in Guayama. In that area right there, that area, we got a history, ancestral story that goes way back, from that area right there. You know what I'm saying? Or up to Calle, that area is the southern part of the island. Um, when you look at the DNA, give me 1 second here. Yeah. Um, uh, so it's very important to get your DNA testing. You know what I'm saying? Because what it does, the DNA and genealogy, it's very, very important. You know, because you get to learn more about who you are. So DNA testing technology enables you to gain what history has lost. You know what I'm saying? So you want to again solidify that energy grid, that earth grid is finding out one, your ancestor, your immediate ancestor, and creating your shrine. At the same time, is learning about your genetic blueprint. Okay, to know where in your DNA has traveled throughout times, and it could be linked. It could be linked. So the idea of connecting. Okay, so the Tainos. For centuries, the Taínos were disconnected from one another. Many did not know their true heritage and were told that the Taínos died out centuries ago. So this is a way of knowing facts, okay? Because if your DNA is primarily Taíno DNA, then it's not a fact that they killed out all the Taínos. How can that be when most of your DNA is Taíno? So that means we're still here. We still have a culture. Culture is very important because culture is the cultivating of nature. So we still can cultivate our nature. We still have that culture. So we have to find out what's our true nature in order to cultivate that. You know what I'm saying? And what that does, culture is your economics too. Economic. And this is what I tell my African brothers and sisters because I also have African DNA. Okay? All those islands do, especially in the Caribbean, in the West Indies, Caribbean, we also have African DNA because as a matter of fact, most of the Africans taken from Africa went to the Brazil, the Caribbean, and the West Indies. It's just that because of the Spaniards and their system was about, and also the British, they had a system in the Caribbean called whitening the race. You know what I'm saying? Biancalamento, something like that, where so there was a more mixture, and also in that heavy area in the Caribbean, you have Tainos everywhere, and they were also enslaved. So you had African that they brought over mixed in with Tainos, and then you had those from the Canary Islands, what they call the mulattoes, where if you are showing genetics of the mulattoes, you know something, Spain, they screwed up because there was a law that was passed at that time that they were not to take the mulattoes out of that area from the east, from Spain and from the Canary Islands, from the areas, Morocco, and all that area. They were not to take the mulattoes out into the New World. But you see, they don't tell you this. You had the three ships, Santa Maria, La Nina, and the Pinta. Pay attention. Santa Maria was a Catholic church. That ship was sponsored by the Catholic Church. They financed that particular ship where Diego and Columbus, Christopher Columbus, Colon, and Diego Colon, that's where they shipped. Then you had where Pedro, what they call Pedro el Negro, the black, or Pinzon, the Pedro el Negro, that was a Nina. And the Nina, the Nin, and the Nin was a title that the Moorish, Nigerian Moors had that title. Ninger, and they had that title. That was their ship, and they financed their ship because they were the one that gave the information to the Spaniards that the world was not flat, the world is round, and there's another civilization out there because there was other Moors that came to this side of the world before Columbus came. There were Moors that traveled. The millennium Moors had a very advanced navy, very advanced in their naval excerpt. The navy was very advanced, and they traveled through what they call those lines, through the grid lines, but what they call the I forgot what they call those streams in the Atlantic Ocean. So they were very, very vested, and they had knowledge of that. Okay. And then the other shit, what they don't talk about pinta, when you look at pinta, and the word pinta means painted. That means that these mulattoes had alkaline features, but they were dark skinned, like if they were like white man painted dark. You know what I'm saying? This is where the description that a lot of the Spaniards used to say about the mulattoes. Damn, their features are aqualine, but they darker than us, but they got the aqualine features. Pinta. So that's ship where your servitudes, your laborers were on that ship. They screwed up. That's the reason why they don't mention that ship a lot. Even though it's on records, but they don't mention it a lot. They don't want to go there because they broke the law back then. So, like, they talk about reparation. I mean, no one is asking for, but it's that if you mulattoes should get a lot of reparation too, because you took them from an area and brought them here against the law. Against the law. Look it up. There's account of that Isabella and Fernando, a law that the mulattoes are not to be taken out and brought into the New World. But they did it anyway. They did it anyway. You know what I'm saying? So you have that mixture, African, Taino, and mulattoes. And that's what created the Caribbean people. Today you have Cubans, Dominicans, and Puerto Ricans, and Bahamians. You know what I'm saying? So knowing about this, you connect with your tribe, your family. Knowing about this about yourself, this is the earth energy, your ancestral patterns and your genetic blueprint. This is where healing comes in, the life force healing. When you know this and you're sure, you got your genetics, your DNA testing, your genetics, everything. Now you can heal yourself and then join organizations depending on that. Because with the Tainos, you got to do your DNA, and then you got to submit your DNA with an application. They look at it, and then they determine what tribe are you from, what area, and what tribe. See, I know this because I met my great grandma, and I know where my family is invested, and I know where they're from. But then again, before that, they could have moved from another area in Puerto Rico or from the Virgin Islands, or you don't know from where. So it's good to know. It's good to know this information, you know. And then right now they're doing a lot of DNA testing on a lot of African American, and they are finding out stuff. Matter of fact, a lot of people are trying to hide it. You know what I'm saying? But they're finding out. I had a brother come to me one time. He says, I got 32% of Caucasian, of Irish in me. 32%. He was shocked. And I'm like, well, I mean, did you know that most of the African women, in order for them to win their freedom from slavery and to get certain notoriety or certain statuses within that slavery system, she had to bore children for the slave master. So the more children she birthed from the slave master, the more status she got. You know, amongst African American, you got what they call the high yellows. You got African Americans that even dark skinned but have the mentality of a European. They clone you like that, just like they clone us in the Caribbean. The same way, the African, the Taino, mulatto, they cloned you and gave you a Spaniard mentality and way of life. Some of us, a lot of us, well, you got to get out of it because it doesn't matter about that. Is the majority of your DNA makeup, if it's African, learn from where? A lot of them have from Ghana, from the Western Coast, Ghana. They found a lot in African Americans here in the mainland here. They found a lot from Ghana and from the West Coast, not Senegambia, right? In the Caribbean, they found a lot of Congolese, small Central Africans, Congolese, way into the Congo. You know what I'm saying? So this is all genetic. Now with technology that they have, they're able to. It's important to know this because it's important to know what you're made of in terms of genetically, and that way your ancestral reverence. But the ancestral reverence, like I told you, I like to deal with my immediate ancestors, the ones that I'm able to, the up to the fourth, the second or third generation. Fourth generation, if you can go back then, is okay. But further than that, it's a little disconnecting. You know what I'm saying? Got to deal with your immediate one. And when you do have your ancestral reverence, your shrine, deal with that. Okay? And remember, they live inside of you. They're not outside of you. They're not gonna eat that food because they don't live like that. They live inside of you. So whatever your ancestors like, eat that in their memory. In their memory. You know what I'm saying? And you can do that. You can have a meal that your grandpa used to love, or your grandma used to love, your great grandma, your great grandpa. That meal, sit down and have reverence for them. You have their picture. You have certain things that they like, and you make that connection. You make that connection with yourself because that's connected to your earth energy. And then your DNA blueprint, your genetic blueprint, get to know that. So now you're complete when it comes to your because you're leaving DNA genetics, the territory where you at right now. Right now. You know what I'm saying? Because that deals with your environment too. You know? So you get to know that's grounding, anchoring yourself. Go out to your meeting, go out there, check out the leaves, and get into a garden or walk barefooted in the grass, whatever, and ground yourself to the earth. Okay? Peace. Hold on. You got my message? Look at this beauty that I have here. Oh my. Mm. Oh, she is so beautiful. Yeah, this is my granddaughter, and this is the one that I watch and I see her always trying to look at. What are you looking at? I don't got no tits like that for you. No, no, girl. What you? Oh man. Well, oh baby. Oh well. Anyway, this is what life is all about. So again, grounding. You know what I'm saying? Want to make sure that these babies too have that ancestral pattern. Anyway, let me end this. I gotta feed the baby. You know what I'm saying? So we'll talk about this later on and continue on. So peace.